Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. I'm your host, Gorgeous George, and with me, as always, some of the best minds in the business. This week, we got Matt Wells, fresh off of covering UFC in Austin, Texas. The man killed it for us. He should have got $50K too. The Boston shot caller is back. Nolan King out of Beantown. We got to lift him up since the C's let him down last week. And, of course, goes... He's rounding out the squad from MMA Junkie Radio. No place he'd rather be each week unless you give him a pit pass for an upcoming Grand Prix. Then he's out. Cold Coffee, he's on the ones and twos. Let's get to it. All right, guys. In the main event at UFC on ESPN 37, featherweights Calvin Kattar and Josh Emmett threw down for 25 minutes in what was pretty damn good scrap. The three judges were not unanimous, as two judges had it 48-47 for Emmett. One judge had it 48-47 for Kattar. Close fight. Now that the dust is settled, I need to know, did Josh Emmett, who won his fifth straight in a row, did he solidify a title shot, or did he at least kind of narrow the field down of possible contenders? That includes himself, obviously. In other words, did Emmett show Volkanovski something? That's what Volk wanted. Matt Wells, you're starting things off. 4 minutes are on the clock.
Yeah, I don't know how much he actually showed the champ, but I mean, he won the fight, which is a big thing for him. He's obviously going to be in that mix now. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be that next guy in line, because you have a very huge matchup coming up between Brian Ortega and Yair Rodriguez. Both of those guys are bigger names. They bring more fanfare. And let's face it, the start of this fight in Austin didn't start off all too great. There was a long feel-out process. The fans started booing early. Even though obviously the action picked up as the fight went on, it turned out to be a pretty good fight. But I don't think he did enough to really put his stamp on it to be like, hey, I'm that next guy in line now. Yes, he got his hand raised, but it wasn't definitive. As we see now, like, there's a lot of arguments back and forth of who actually won that fight. So I think it's going to come down to how that bout between Ortega and Rodriguez plays out. And if that turns out to be a banger and somebody goes out there and gets a finish, then you could expect that guy to be next in line, in my opinion. But he's in the mix. But don't be surprised if he has to take another fight before getting a title shot.
Got it. Good stuff. All right, Nolan, take things from here. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's this division's interesting right now because I think we all view it as like one of the better ones in the UFC. But I feel like at this point in time, we hit one of those plateaus where we had so many contenders at one point that they all ended up having to fight each other, and half of them lost. And right now, it's really hard to look at this division and see anybody that has any sort of momentum. I mean, Matt mentioned the upcoming fight between Yair and Brian Ortega. Both guys coming off losses. Korean Zombie's coming off a loss. Calvin Kattar's coming off a loss. Giga Chikadze's coming off a loss. There's a lot of losses going on right now in this division. So for me, I mean, Josh Emmett's on this big win streak. Sure, that fight wasn't the most impressive, performance, I think, of all time that we've ever seen. Maybe it doesn't scream, oh, this guy really presents a huge challenge to the champion, Alexander Volkanovski or Max Holloway, whoever wins that fight. But to me, I mean, I think the guy has certainly positioned himself just with the way that the division is to be in that conversation. And maybe he'll have to fight again. I think Matt's point is very valid about his name recognition. These other guys maybe can just bounce back right into a title fight, or Yair to get his first one coming off of if he were to go through Ortega, just one single win to get him there. But for me, I mean, I think Emmett's got a legitimate case, and I kind of liked his idea of being a backup fighter. That way the division, obviously these other guys are booked. You don't have to interfere, and you have that insurance. And I don't think the UFC will do it. I mean, we're a couple weeks away, but I think Josh Emmett's right there. And if it's not right now, he's going to be one more, and he'll be right there.
Yeah, I don't think anyone handed him a mirror when he had said that part about being a backup in 2 weeks. Just take your front seat, buddy. But congrats on the win. How about you, Goes?
Well, honestly, I think if you go back to even before the Korean Zombie, I thought he had a decent argument. I think with a victory now, like, I don't know if people understand how good Calvin Kattar is. That's a very solid win. I know a lot of people felt maybe Calvin Kattar won that fight. It was close, but the thing that he lacked was name power, and I think being the main event here against a good guy like Calvin Kattar, I think that kind of gave him the ammunition that he needs. He's just got to stay out there. He's got to do interviews. He's got to maybe even mouth off a little bit because, as Matt and Nolan said, Yair, who doesn't want to tune in for a guy like that? And that guy can create a highlight like that, and all of a sudden he's going to basically do, I mean, really, when you think about the picture, it's not that much different than what the Korean Zombie did to Emmett, right? Big name, maybe not as an impressive streak, but he could do something like that. So I really think Josh Emmett needs to be vocal. I think he needs to stay out there. Unfortunately, the prize on all this, guys, is Alexander Volkanovski. I don't know. The guy keeps getting better with every fight. He's smashing people. He's not just beating them, he's destroying them. That's your prize, but I think Josh Emmett deserves it.
Yeah, man. Volkanovski looks so outstanding that a lot of pressure was put on the division. I thought he handled that right. But he's got Holloway ahead of him. Looking forward to that. All right. Next up here on UFC on ESPN 37 had some great finishes. A lot of them, actually. A lot of them in the first round, too. I think there was 6 total, 50K for everybody. It was like Dana White was Oprah Winfrey. Everyone gets a car. But what I want to know, guys, is which one of them finishes had the biggest statement within their own division, or perhaps even greater than that, maybe, ripple effect throughout the UFC or the sport itself. So I'm wondering who climbed that ladder of becoming a star, which is ultimately what the UFC strives to create every week. Nolan, you're leading things off. 4 minutes on the clock.
I'm gonna have to go with Batman, Kevin Holland. I think you're talking about a statement to a division. His second fight at welterweight, and he goes out there and finishes a guy like Tim Means. I think that's a really solid pairing to have with his win against Alex Oliveira, the 2 fights that he's had at welterweight. And, he made the Sean Brady call out afterwards. And, man, I think stylistically that's not the best fight for him. But I think those are the type of matchups that you can give him at this point. You can give him those ranked guys. I mean, this fight, the Oliveira fight was kind of a weird one. There were some moments Oliveira had. But I think that's the type of fight that Alex Oliveira is. He sucks guys into these brawl-type scenarios. But Tim Means, I mean, he went out there, handled him pretty comfortably, pieced him up on the feet. As soon as Means wanted to take it down, he snatched the neck, and that was it. So obviously Kevin's got the it factor to a certain degree. He's got the talent. He's got the finishing abilities. He's exciting. He talks well. He's somebody that you can throw into any scenario at this point. And I think the welterweight division, he's a welcome addition to that division. So give him a big fight. He made a statement to the division, and we'll see if he'll get that September matchup that he's looking for against Sean Brady.
And if they ever do a Mall Cop 2, man, I want to see Kevin James and Kevin Holland sharing the stage. That guy knows how to catch a thief. All right, next up is Goes.
I can't believe he saw Mall Cop 1, George. Whenever Adrian Yanez fights, man, I feel like this kid comes in with all this weight on his shoulders, right? In this particular one, secretly, privately, whatever you want to say, I feel like a lot of people wanted Yanez to not just beat this guy, but serve him up. And that carries a little bit of pressure. And Adrian Yanez came in. He got the job done. He never complains about anything. He comes in and gives great fights. So I think this dude did a lot, man. And if you look at the past year, everything he's endured, he's become a father, right? And he's a father now. He lost his coach. So not only did he have to adapt to that, but he kind of took on the responsibilities of Sauce Luis with the gym. He carries that weight on him. Now I think if you look at him, he's so fun to watch. You see how people gravitate to this kid. He's even an adopted hero for Brazilians now, right? I think that when this kid has pressure on his shoulders, it's when he thrives the most. And I think he made the biggest splash. I think he deserves a big name, maybe in that second tier, but I think a Frankie Edgar or a Rob Font, somewhere around there. I think he deserves a name like that. I think that's something that will really help him. But I do feel like he jumped a tier in this past weekend, and I think he can continue to do that. But the one fight, if I can create the perfect scenario for him, I'd love to see him fight Sean O'Malley at some point.
Yeah, it seems like inevitably we'll get there. And by the way, my strategy on fight week, go to Texas de Brazil with Adrian Yanez. No way we're picking up the bill. Matt Wells, you were there, man. You got your co-signing here, or you got another one?
No, I loved Adrian Yanez's performance. That was my number one pick out of the whole list, just because of the reaction and everything that surrounded that fight, all of the trash talk, him overcoming that and being that hero like Goes mentioned. But if I have to pick another knockout that was pretty spectacular, I'm going to go with Ricardo Ramos's knockout, that spinning back elbow out of nowhere to close the show early in the first round. It's not often that we see guys hurt themselves when they, land a knockout blow. And that was the case. He came to the post-fight press conference with ice on his elbow. That's how hard he hit Danny Chavez with that elbow. So not to mention also it made ESPN's, top 10 #1 as well that night. So it was a spectacular knockout. So giving props to him. But I also want to give a little bit of shout out to someone who didn't finish a fight, but looked absolutely incredible. Natalia Silva in her UFC debut went out there and looked like she could style on anybody in the division. So got to show her a little bit of love. I'm very interested to see where she goes as well.
Yeah, you know, and I think Joaquin Buckley, I guess if I can participate, I think he was on his way to a highlight, and you know, that'll be a big win for him. All right, let's continue on here. Topic number 3, Joe Lauzon was not able to compete this past weekend. So for the second time in less than 2 months, the Cerrone-Lauzon fight that we all wanted was nowhere to be found. His knee locked up, by the way. At the post-fight press conference, UFC president Dana White shot down a potential fight between the two. So no third fight, at least according to him. But man, I know this guy, Dana White, covered him for a long time. He's a passionate guy, and sometimes he can be convinced. Guys, I want you to bring it, man. If you want to see the fight, you know, unless you're on his side, I want to know, can we change his mind? Do you guys want to see it? Or are you on the other side? Goes, you're leading things off. You got 4 minutes.
Yeah, I still want to see it, man. I mean, you're right. Dana White always talks about if the fans want it, they'll try and make it happen. I think at this point, we all want it. The Tony Ferguson, Khabib Nurmagomedov situation, I think it's kind of far from that territory. I mean, that just kept happening over and over and over again. In this particular instance, it's usually like the weight cut that gets these guys or something, but it's just been bad luck. They hit the mark every time. Something crazy happens. Because of their age, there aren't that many options out there. It's not like you just turn around and pick another guy. Like, there's tons of killers in these divisions, and both guys have both publicly said, like, they're closer to on their ways out. So you have to remember, both guys have endured 2 training camps for this, okay? One longer than the other, yeah, but still, that's a lot of birthdays missed, a lot of holidays. Give these guys their life back, man. Book this fight ASAP. They seem like it can go right away. Just give it to them, because I feel like I've lost out a little bit. I wasn't the biggest fan of this fight when it was first announced, but kind of just seeing it miss 2 times has made me want to watch it even more. There's unfinished business with these 2 fighters. So put them on as quickly as you can, make the fight happen, but don't just take it away from us.
All right. Now, I will say in September, there was a rumor of a fight card with Aljamain Sterling and TJ Dillashaw, and I remember reading Atlanta and Boston are in play. Maybe you guys can update me. I don't know. But Matt Wells, are you feeling this or nah?
I mean, why not? I mean, we're at a point now where these guys are obviously at the tail end of their careers, and there's not too many options left in this UFC lightweight division for either one of these guys. As we're seeing a lot of these guys that, you know, would be like that veteran style matchup, leave the promotion and do other things like join the PFL, for example. So there's not too many options unless if you match up one of these guys with like a killer or something like that, one of these young up and comers. Not too many people are going to be as interested in that matchup than they will be the one where it's the 2 veterans going at it. And now you also have this story. The fight's fallen apart twice now. Cowboy talked about at Media Day how he hasn't asked the UFC for much, really. You know, he asked to keep this fight together, and they did it for him. So I'm sure if he goes to Dana again and like, hey, you know, I really want to keep this matchup with Joe. Joe really wants this matchup. Let's do it a third time. I think Dana won't need too much convincing, because I think he also realizes that this is that perfect style matchup for both guys right now. So, you know, if you want to go ahead and try it again, again, this fight card didn't suffer too much with it being off of it. I think it absolutely would have added to it, because I think that fight's it's a lot of fun for both guys. So why not make it happen a third time? Just make sure it's on a card with a lot of other stacked talent. And, you know, if it falls apart at the third time, then, oh, well, it's doomed. Don't do it.
Nice. All right. How about you, Nolan? What are your thoughts here? Round things out.
Yeah, I just don't understand why they wouldn't go back to it. I mean, is there anything more like pointlessly superstitious than thinking that we're not going to book this fight again because it's going to fall apart? Like, you could book these guys against other people and they're just magically not, whatever scenario, them, you know, weight cutting or having their knee lock up, it's just not going to happen if they're not matched up with each other. Like, you run the risk of guys pulling out of fights regardless of who you booked them against. So for me, like George said, if they do end up putting this card in Boston on September 10th, like, seems like a no-brainer that Joe would be on there. I know Cerrone kind of said he wants to get booked right away. So that seems like a good timeline for this whole thing. And I mean, let's face it, these 2 guys should be fighting each other. I mean, unless we want like Eddie Wineland send-offs here where they're matching up, you know, guys that are veterans that have against a guy that's got, you know, equal name recognition to him, that's a younger, better version that's going to finish him. I don't see the point in doing stuff like that. So let's try it one more time. Let's match them up and let's see what happens. I mean, lightning can't strike 3 times, right?
Yeah, true. Well, it can, but let's hope it doesn't. And let's hope there's no Mexican food vendors outside the streets of Boston. I think that's what took out Cerrone the first time. So make it up northeast, no southwest. Let's go to topic number 4. We're going to reverse things a little bit and go to Friday night since UFC was Saturday night. So the PFL had their regular season action going. It was the second fight for some of these guys and gals on the regular season as they move towards the playoffs. We had lightweights and light heavyweights on the bill. With this being the second regular season fight, playoff spots were up for grabs. Like I mentioned, Jeremy Stephens, one of the prize free agent signings for the PFL. He won his fight, but he didn't rack up enough points to make the playoffs. A few big names have come up short in the past as well. I think of Anthony Pettis and Fabrice Verdum. So I want to ask you guys, do you think this will make PFL reconsider big free agent signings in the future? Matt, you have 4 minutes. We're coming right back at you now.
I don't think so at all. I think this is what the PFL envisioned when they came up with this format of the season and the points and, you know, how they do their whole thing of crowning a champion. I think they want it to be a situation where they bring in a big name that has more fan support that will make them not only tune into the product, but, you know, want to see how those big names do. And when those big names show up and they don't win, that creates this underdog story. That creates the Houseman Fios that we saw last year. That's what they want. I think they want to continue to create these underdog stories. So that's kind of the thing. Next season, who's going to be the underdog that rises through and, you know, knocks off the big names as the huge underdog? I think that's what they want every single season. So I could see them, if anything, signing more big names, just so the guys that have been with the PFL can continue to prove that there are better fighters just out of the UFC, better fighters just out of, you know, Bellator and whatnot. So I think that they embrace that, and I think they want that. So I don't see them changing anything. If at all, they're going to sign more big names if possible.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Nice take. Nolan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with Matt. I think just to build on that thought and like kind of peel the curtain back a little bit, we have a case study here with Bellator. I mean, that's the biggest thing we can compare it to. And sure, you know, their promotions are very different. One's a tournament, one's more of a traditional, you know, sort of booking sort of thing. But for Bellator, I mean, that was their product. That was their selling point when Scott Coker took over, was we're going to just sign people that are going to be big name recognition guys that people will tune in for, regardless of how old they are, regardless of what they look like, regardless of who we match them up against. And we're going to draw ratings. We're going to draw people's interest, and they'll look at other fighters on the card as well. And we'll build those people's names. We'll build the prospects. And so for Bellator, I think that backfired a little bit. Ultimately, it hurt their branding, where, you know, it kind of became somewhat of a joke online and stuff, where people were like, oh, somebody's retired and they're 50 and they're going to sign with Bellator, and Scott Coker's licking his lips and all this stuff. So they recently, just like I said, to peel back the curtain, they kind of went full force the other way. They said, no, we don't want to have that association anymore. We're not going to sign any of these former UFC guys. Couldn't help himself with Yoel Romero. But those are the type of things that, you know, the signings where it needs to be a balance. So for PFL, they need to balance it where they find the guys that have that name recognition, but they can also bring it. You know, I think Bellator signing a Corey Anderson was like the perfect crossroads of that, right? He had name recognition, and now he's showing that he's still got that really great top tier, top 3, top 2, maybe best in the world talent over in Bellator. PFL needs to do the same thing, bring these guys in, the ones that are still competitive, that people are still interested in, and build their stars, like Matt said.
Yeah, and we're recently coming off that McKee Pitbull fight, 2 guys homegrown through Bellator. Yep. I like it. How about you guys? What do you think?
I think it's always going to be a win-win situation for the PFL, because really the way you have to look at it is you want to get people to tune in for the regular season. That's where you get that talent. I'd say don't shoot so high, shoot mid-tier. I think guys like Jeremy Stephens are perfect. Get people to tune in for that, because once you get out of there and you get to the playoffs, no matter what, people are going to want to tune in to the playoffs. They want to see who the best is, who's going to win the $1 million. And then that's when you hit them with, you know, you get your Kayla Harrisons in there and all that. You're always going to have our attention, right? It's like a house party. You know, not every song is going to make you go out on the dance floor. You're kind of waiting for It Takes Two or something. I'm sorry, I haven't been to a party in a long time, but you're waiting for that right song, right? So that's what PFL has to do. They kind of got to hit you here and there with a couple jabs, and then boom, clock you with a big one. I think right now they're doing a good job, because either way, if the fighter loses, okay, well, what does that say about their roster, right? You can't just come in with a name. You have to actually perform. And like Matt said, that's how you build the Houseman Fios of the world, the Ray Coopers of the world, the Clay Collards. But the thing about PFL is they don't seem to reign too long, because somebody new comes along. And I think that's the secret to the success.
All right, good stuff, guys. But I got to point out, the guy that called me out on Mall Cop, It Takes Two, huh? All right.
Hey, man,
you had to dig for that one. It was a jam, but you had to dig deep for that one. Topic 5, Habib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson as coaches. Has lost a little bit of steam. So, guys, I want you to give me a pairing that would work good on camera and obviously would be a potential barn burner in the octagon. I need the drama every Tuesday, you know, fireworks, some pushing and shoving that leads to the fight. This season just hasn't really provided that. I'm not hating on it, but I wanted a little bit more. So, Nolan, I task you with taking things from here. You got 4 minutes. Let's hear about your pairing.
Yeah, it's tough to plan this far ahead. I think that's the big thing here is like trying to think of a matchup that can be built, you know, a year from now, because you got to go through the tryouts, you got to go through the filming, you got to go through the airing of the show, and then you obviously have to have, you know, a few weeks, I think, before the actual fight between the coaches takes place. So for me, kind of planning ahead, a couple steps ahead, and if the chips fall properly, I would like to see Leon Edwards and Jorge Masvidal do it. Maybe revive a Team USA versus Team United Kingdom season like they did in the past with Ross Pearson and the other guys. I think that would be something if you're trying to do something a little bit different, even if it's something that you've done once before. I think they need something to make it just not be the same, just coach versus coach. They fight at the end. There's nothing special about it. I think people get drawn into those seasons that they've done that have had a theme, that they've been, you know, the comebacks, or they've been, you know, countries fighting each other. I think that's what they need to go toward with this season. And I think that this, you know, Usman versus Edwards has to play out. I would say this scenario would only occur if Edwards lost. So there's a lot of what ifs and a lot of chips that would have to fall, like I said. But when you're planning a year ahead, I think that those are the type of scenarios that you need to kind of keep in your mind, is like things are going to play out a certain way that are going to change things. So it is really hard to predict that far away. But I kind of like the Leon versus Masvidal sort of drama that could come from that if Edwards were to lose to Usman.
3 pieces and a soda is all I can think about. Yeah, I think that one would be a good one. All right, goes. How about you? Let's hear about your pairing. Don't forget, it takes 2.
I actually love Nolan's idea, and the sponsorship could be off the chain because I'd have a 3-piece and a soda every week watching that, man. Great stuff. All right, this guy's not going to like me after I say this. But what about Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler? That fight alone has fireworks written all over it. Dustin, I get it. You're going to be on the shelf for a while. But look, make some money here. Let some of the guys at the top fight each other. I mean, it's a big round robin at the top. It'll buy you some time. You can make some money just being on TV, hanging out. But you get paired up with a guy like Michael Chandler, who he knows how to sell a fight. And Dustin Poirier knows how to sell a fight. When you look at their credentials, hey, every fight they put on, top notch. You look at, maybe you could do a little bit of a rivalry there, right? With Sanford MMA and American Top Team. Remember back in the day, Black Zillions and Top Team kind of went at it. Their styles are very friendly. I really think you could make this happen because there's so many different angles to play off of. But you got to give Dustin Poirier a title shot or promise him something, the winner of that fight. But I feel like those two every day on TV, once a week on TV would be gold. I'd say make that happen.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite seasons. That's the one that produced Kamaru Usman as the champ. Good stuff, goes. All right, Matt Wells, the bar is high.
The bar is high, and I do like both of those options that both guys presented, Goes and Nolan there. But let's be honest. They brought in Juliana and Amanda this season to hope to like recapture a lot of interest, because Tough is on life support, in my opinion, you know. So I think we need to really, really, really go for it, really revitalize it. And I can't think of anything bigger than bringing in Francis Ngannou and John Jones ahead of this potential huge heavyweight title match. There's no other, you know, matchup that I can think of that would be bigger in terms of immediately bringing more eyes to Tough, just to see what John Jones is like. What's he looking like? You know, how is he coaching? You know, how is he acting as well? What's going on with Francis? How is he moving after his knee injury? All sorts of things like that. How is Francis as a coach as well? I think that would be the most interesting thing that you could do if your goal is to get more eyes back on Tough. And of course, obviously the fight at the end of it, right? There's no bigger fight that you can make, right?
That was good. That was good. Africa versus USA, maybe? You think there's a theme there? I mean, obviously the UFC's got 3 African champions. There's a lot of great athletes in a lot of sports. I just think that continent has produced so many great athletes. I possibly would like to see something like that too. Good stuff, guys. Way to close strong. Thank you all for tuning in to the Spinning Back Clique every week. Hey, leave a comment below. I'm going to start jumping in them comments and throwing elbows with you guys. I always enjoy doing that. Keep it locked on MMA Junkie throughout the week. There's a Bellator card this week. There's a Cage Warriors fight this week. PFL again. And, of course, UFC. So check it out. And it all leads into next week, which is going to be tremendous on International Fight Week. So, again, keep it locked here on MMA Junkie. We'll see you next week on Spinning Back Clique.